Xin chào các bạn, chào mừng tất cả các bạn đã đến với chương trình Lịch sử hào hùng, một chương trình được đặc biệt tạo ra bởi iCast giúp cho việc luyện tập nghe tiếng Anh trở nên thú vị hơn qua những chủ đề lịch sử. Để luyện tập tốt hơn, hãy cùng quét mã bài tập ở góc phải màn hình hoặc click vào phần mô tả để luyện tập tốt nhất nhé. Ok, bắt đầu thôi!
After the Tet Offensive in 1968, the United States was compelled to de-escalate and sit down for the negotiations with us in Paris to reach a compromise on halting the bombing and ending the conflict in Vietnam. This conference brought the name of diplomat Lê Đức Thọ to global prominence, making him the only Vietnamese person to receive a Nobel Prize to date. Because the Paris Agreement was the intermediary venue for negotiations between us and the US, we spent months negotiating, understanding that the locations of the talks significantly influenced the final outcome. The United Nations, as the intermediary, initially suggested Paris, which we agreed upon, but the US wanted Geneva. Switzerland, an unofficial ally of the US. Finding this two disadvantages, we preferred to negotiate in Phnom Penh, where the government was led by King Norodom Sihanouk, a great admirer of Ho Chi Minh. We proposed Phnom Penh to garner support from our allies and to facilitate easier intelligence operations. Both sides exchanged dozens of proposed locations, but none were mutually acceptable. Eventually, it was the United Nations that finalized Paris as a location. Paris has historical significance, as it was the former colonial ruler of Vietnam, and the US has poured considerable resources into France to fight Vietnam, making it a comfortable choice for the US. Moreover, the US was confident in these negotiations, believing that as a wealthy nation, experience in such talks is held the upper hand. They viewed Vietnam as a poor country, unversed in negotiation tactics. However, the US underestimated Vietnam. Our confidence in sitting as equals with the US in Paris was bolstered by the support of many French friends, including the French Communist Party and youth and women's movements. France, at the time, also had a strong protest movement. We spent months just deciding on the venue, but that was only the beginning. Vietnam was not as naive as the US believed. Once the location was set, we still had to fiercely debate the specifics, such as whether to use rectangular or square table. Initially, the US wanted bilateral negotiation with a rectangular table, each side sitting opposite the other. However, we insisted that the discussions on ending the war must include the National Liberation Front of South Vietnam and the Republic of Vietnam. Therefore, we wanted four-party negotiations with a square table, each delegation sitting at one side. After much debate, we finally agreed on a round table, which made it ambiguous whether it was a two-party or four-party negotiation. Vietnam was adamant that neither China nor the Soviet Union should participate in the talks. We understood from the Geneva Conference that sitting with major powers often meant being overshadowed and bullied. This time, we were determined to sit as equal with the US. If China and the Soviet Union were present at the Paris negotiations, it would have played into the US' hand. The US believed that pressure from Vietnam's allies would force us to make concessions, and any agreements reached would not have to be honored by the US. This is why diplomat Lê Đức Thọ was able to outmaneuver Henry Kissinger at the Paris negotiations. These stories offer many lessons for everyday negotiations in life. even with a small thing as taking a girlfriend out. Understanding the importance of location can help win her over. For example, the seating arrangement on the first date can reveal your position in her eyes. Sitting opposite each other indicates competition. You must prove you are sincere, empathetic, and humorous. Only when you move to sitting side by side, looking in the same direction, does cooperation in a relationship begin. This is why dates often involve dinner, sitting opposite, and then watching a movie, sitting side by side. Understanding these nuances ensures you know the next step, whether to continue the date or say goodbye. Returning to the Paris negotiations, Lady Thor's strategic reasoning and argument managed to outshine the top American diplomat and Harvard professor. All the detail of how he did it will be discovered in the next episode. Stay tuned.
Chương trình xin được phép tạm dừng tại đây. Đừng quên ấn like và subscribe nhé.